I went from thinking about how I did not want to live for probably 12 hours a day to maybe 2 or 3 hours a day in a matter of weeks, just from picking up a basic understanding of mindfulness and being able to, identify thought, categorize the thought if it's, unnecessary or unskillful, being able to transition to something positive. If I don't have the resources to affect it today, I put it on the calendar. And then after that, I pray to God and try to pass the rest of that fear and anxiety to him in the form of prayer and faith.
From Detox House, this is the Find Your Freedom podcast with your host, Alex Hoynatska. Have you ever imagined the magic that would happen, the world we would live in, if everyone was operating from a physiologically centered place? What if you just gave your body a chance for that? Give yourself a chance as if you were your own pill. You are the medicine. Detox House is a portal for connecting the physical body with the spiritual body. We calm and reset nervous systems through a curated trio of everyday release practices such as breathwork, sauna, and cold plunge. These modalities are made better with a greater understanding of what our bodies are capable of, what we are capable of. That's why we're here, to remind you of your own power and to guide you back to find your freedom. Let's talk about what that means. We don't just want to imagine a world where everyone is operating from a centered place, we want to see it. To find out more about breathwork, sauna, and cold plunge practices, and to get guided doses of all three modalities, download the Detox House app. Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Find Your Freedom podcast. I'm so happy you're here. I thought I would start sharing just more about my life and what's going on and some of the themes as a kickoff to these episodes, since I'm doing them now a little bit more consistently, which I love. Thank God I found a process for that, because creating this content, doing this podcast is something that really fills my cup, lights my soul up. And it is something I've been working on too with my coach, figuring out how do I do more of what lights me up. I'm a manifesting generator in human design, if anybody is into human design. And I tend to like to do a lot of different things. And that's okay, And part of this Detox House world that I'm building is this podcast. And I think it's so important to share not only this beautiful conversation that I had with Brandon, which there's so many things here that I definitely want to highlight, but also just to continuously share this information with you, all of the conversations I've been having on the podcast and themes in my life and how I'm incorporating these practices into my everyday life too. Because I think that's also really key, and I want to start doing that. So life lately has been chaotic, to say the least. It's been hectic in great ways, but there's just a lot to hold and a lot to juggle. So on the personal side of things, I do want to share that I lost my grandmother this week, which was expected. It's always really interesting. Death, grief, all of those things have been a part of my life lately, especially. I lost my best friend 2 years ago. I don't know if I've ever shared this on the podcast, but I lost an ex-boyfriend of mine in 2019. Both really young, really sad, sudden in a way, also losses. And so I've become a little too familiar with this idea of death and grief. I've done a lot of spiritual work to answer the questions for myself and what works for me as to what happens when we are no longer part of this earth plane and what happens when we transition. And I have my own beliefs about that, which are constantly evolving. So that's a whole other episode, and that's a whole other topic that I don't even want to get into today. All to say is that I've been on a journey of answering those questions for myself and figuring out what resonates with me. I grew up with certain beliefs, but not all of those beliefs resonate with me. And what really speaks to me and what really works for me is something that I'm still exploring. But I think I've found a pretty
pretty good path, but once that's a little bit more solid, I'll share that. But that's definitely something that, is tough during the holiday season. It's never ideal to see your parent lose a parent, because the last thing you want to do is see your parents sad and grieving, and it, breaks your heart and all of that. So that's definitely heavy on my heart today. And just a lot going on with the holidays and schedules, and it's a busy time of year. And so my nervous system is a bit wrecked in terms of how can I hold all of the good and how can I process all of the not so good and build resilience. And obviously that's why I love sauna and cold plunge and breath work. It's been my go-to. And lately it's been so cold outside. I've actually just been going outside in pretty much just a tank top and shorts and just going outside and just closing my eyes and being in nature and breathing. I've been liking that a little bit more than cold plunge. My body's been craving the cold that way and through cold showers. So over the last week, I've been doing a little bit more of that and the sauna as well, which has been feeling really cathartic, really great. And I'm just so grateful for these modalities. Something that's relevant to this conversation today, which I'm excited to share with you, a conversation with Brandon, is rewiring the brain and really getting the body comfortable with whatever it is we want to hold. So one thing that I've been doing in the cold and the cold plunge, cold shower, outside in the cold, is imagining how and what I want to feel more of so that my body can register that. And there's a reason behind this, which we'll talk about in this episode, how the shot of norepinephrine that you get with cold, specifically cold plunge, is really good for visualization, for rewiring your brain, rewiring your nervous system to be able to hold the life you want. So if you want to, create this life where you're an entrepreneur, you're the CEO of a successful brand, you're a creative artist, you're a wife, you're a mother, you're a dad, you're a husband, you're whatever role you want to create for yourself. You're a pro athlete, you're an Olympic gold medal, you're an Olympian, is what I'm trying to say. Whatever it is that you want to be, it is so much easier for you to solidify that in your nervous system, in your body when you're in the cold, which I found so fascinating. I've definitely been doing that this week. So we share a lot about this practice and way more than that in this conversation with Brandon Davis. So Brandon, my guest today, is the CEO and founder of the Davis Focus Project, which is a nonprofit for human performance. And essentially what that means and who Brandon is. So Brandon is a veteran. He used to fly Black Hawks in the military. He's somebody who's passionate about working with vets and healing their PTSD, their brain injuries, their anxiety, their depression, and using tools like neurofeedback, like cold plunge, as a healing modality to get to the other side of that trauma. And I think what's brilliant about this is if we look at the military or any top performers or anything like what Brandon is doing, we don't necessarily have to have been through the big T trauma to benefit from the things that they're doing. It's applicable across all individuals, anyone who has a brain. We all have to take care of our brains. We all have programming that was given to us from society, from our parents, whatever it is we were exposed to as a kid and or later on in life too. And if we want to change any of that, if our body is reacting to any of that, for example, if you got into a car accident at some point, your body remembers that, your body stores that, your body registers it as a trauma. If that is debilitating you in any way in your life, maybe you have a fear of driving or driving a certain type of car, whatever it is, you can change that through this process of brain rewiring and cold therapy and neurofeedback. But it's also relevant for the other side of that is if you want to get somewhere in life, right? And if, like I said, if you want to create a different life for yourself, there are these tools that allow you to do that are so fascinating, which is why, again, I love this conversation because we got into the neuroscience of it with Brandon, who is a wealth of knowledge, a beautiful resource, a beautiful human who's doing such great things for the community. And I'm just so grateful to have had this conversation with him. I won't keep you any longer. Without further ado, here's my conversation with Brandon Davis. Thanks for being here today and being open to having this discussion. I would love to start out with your background, just a bit of a high-level overview of who you are and the nonprofit that you run, and how did you get there? You know, you're ex-military, etc. Maybe a little dose of your upbringing would be nice too. Just a quick little synopsis of who is Brandon Davis.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me on your podcast, Alex. I really appreciate that. I love what you're doing, and really happy to be a part of the community here in Nashville. Yeah, so I'll start with a little bit about my upbringing. So I was raised in a military family. My dad was a Black Hawk pilot. My mom was stay-at-home for part of the time. I would say half the time she had a job. You know, we moved quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
Outside of that, there's really nothing crazy about my childhood. I had a one sister that was adopted that I lived with growing up. She was adopted when she was 24 hours old. Very, very
Sweet.
Unique. She was 10 years younger. Amazing. I love her to death. Her name's Blessing. And
great name.
Yeah. It's a great name. I'm about to go see her tomorrow for Thanksgiving, so I'm pretty excited. Yeah, so really nothing out of the ordinary. I just moved all over the place. Fortunately, I got to, visit several countries in Europe. I lived in Germany, Hawaii, Texas, Washington, all over the place. So.
And you joined the military inspired by your dad, I'm sure.
I did. I joined in 2005 out of Texas. Out of Coppers Cove, Texas. I joined about a little less than a year after I graduated high school. And really, I wanted to get my life on track, I think that's where a lot of people are, when they join that early, if they didn't go to college. A lot of people are trying to define or trying to figure out what their purpose in life is. And I needed some structure too. So I knew it was going to be a really good thing for me. And it was. I served 6 years, enlisted. And about the second year, I started submitting my flight school packet to get picked up as a pilot. And I had a lot of barriers. It took me 6 boards to finally get selected to go to flight school. The accession rate at the time was 6% or less.
Yeah.
So it was pretty hard back then. But I made it happen, went to flight school, did really good, got the airframe that I wanted. I got to fly Apaches. I got the fixed wing course, got my duty station, and I assessed for the 160th Special Ops Aviation Regiment about a year after getting out of flight school. And I was selected 6 months later. I was back here in Tennessee for the third time. The first 2 times were with my dad.
Yeah.
But I was back in Tennessee for the third time, and that was 2015. And been here since. Spent the rest of my career in the 160th doing some pretty cool stuff in a Black Hawk instead of an Apache.
Sounds like it, yeah.
And
it's an intense career.
It was very fun. I got to meet a lot of amazing people and visit a lot of really cool places and do some really cool stuff.
Yeah.
So.
Can I ask a question about that, to interrupt your story a little bit, but more so about who you were as a kid too? There's this innate ability to put yourself in danger and this risk-taking, adrenaline searching type of thing that happens. Is that, I'm just assuming that. Because I'm
100%.
You're doing crazy things, amazing things, but you've got to be pretty courageous and you've got to be really comfortable with risk. And so is that just something you have innately? Is it learned from your dad? I'm curious about like what part is nature versus nurture?
I would say it is both nature, nurture, and I would say that quite a bit of my environment is kind of what led me there. So my dad, actually my whole family, and I didn't really pay attention to this until I was an adult, and I looked back and I'm like, oh, I have a family of entrepreneurs. My grandpa owned 5 businesses, a doctor's office, a bunch of different things. And my dad's done a handful of things over the years, but so my family has always been they've been problem solvers, right? And moving from place to place as a kid, things are continuously changing, right?
You have to be adaptable.
Yeah, you have to be adaptable. And so kind of having I would say some genetics for that coming from my dad and grandfather. I think that the environment played a big role in that too. I was able to take some pretty big risks, but had a pretty nice, safety barrier at the house. But I also got to see a lot of different things that most people don't get to see growing up. So,
how did your time in the military impact what you're doing today? How has it shaped you, and how did that kind of flow into the Davis Focus project? If you can tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So I went through a little over a 3-year period where I was pretty suicidal in the military, and it stemmed from a lot of things, right? A lot of it being on the road about 180 to 200 days per year between multiple deployments and different work trips. I was having marital problems and drinking a lot, as a lot of military people do to cope with the high stress. Because I'd be landing in someone's backyard in Syria, and then 2 nights later, or 2 to 3 days later, at a choir concert for my kids, and then 2 weeks later in another place doing something that crazy again.
It's a lot of context switching for a human being. That's intense.
Yeah, it's a lot of switching modes of the nervous system and switching up brain waves or brain frequencies that are being used.
Was there anything, speaking of the nervous system, was there anything that you did during that time or the military provided to you that were nervous system regulators? I just remember reading this somewhere, because this is like a little tidbit, but there's an herb called ashwagandha, and it's found in a lot of teas nowadays for calming purposes. And I think the original use case of ashwagandha I think it was discovered, or not discovered because it's an ancient herb, but really predominantly used during the Vietnam War to help soldiers regulate their nervous system, because it's an adaptogen that helps you kind of whatever your nervous system needs. If it's up, it'll downregulate. If it's down, it'll upregulate. So it adapts to your system. But I'm curious if you had any nervous system regulation practices at that time, or if those came later.
Not a single one.
Okay.
Not a single one. And if I did, we probably wouldn't be talking today, because I wouldn't have created the nonprofit, which I'm very thankful for. I'm glad I didn't have anything, because I had to go find it on my own. And I went through a pretty tough time to formulate what I've put together for the Davis Focus project. Yeah, it's crazy being in a unit that elite. I mean, it is the most elite aviation unit in the world. Mm-hmm. Aviators from all branches of service come to try out to go to this unit, because they know it's the best, and they have the best resources, and they have a human performance program there. But it's not very robust. Like the Tier 1 guys, Delta guys, and Naval Special Warfare Development Group. Those guys, I think they probably have stuff closer to what you're talking about.
Yeah.
But it's not available in the 160th, and it's definitely not available widely throughout the military.
Yeah. Do you think that's going to change sometime soon, or is there more awareness around how you can offer resources? I mean, maybe we should talk about the Davis Focus Project first, because I do think that mission is really important to highlight here. So can you tell us about your nonprofit and, what your mission is.
Yeah. So when I was going through that really difficult time in my life, I had some barriers that prevented me from going to get help. I was an aviator, which going to talk to a counselor kind of feels like the nail in the coffin.
Yeah, you don't want to lose your job.
And you're scared of being temporarily grounded, permanently grounded, and booted out of the military. There's like all these different layers. And then also, maybe you go in there and you don't say anything bad enough to get grounded. People see you going in there. Now you've got the stigma attached to that. Your commander's like, maybe I'm not going to put this guy up for a flight lead ride. And so now your career stops progressing, everything you worked your whole life for, a million reasons to not go, right? Yeah. And I played through the whole thing. There's other reasons too, like financial reasons. It was a third of my paycheck that I would have lost, and I eventually did. So at a certain point, I decided, hey, I've got to figure something out on my own, because trying to get more done right now and get stuff off my plate, my list is never going to end. Mm-hmm. Like, this is a horrible strategy. And so the first thing I did was I downloaded the Waking Up app again. I used it one time to try to help myself go to sleep during a school that I was having trouble sleeping in. Worked great. I thought maybe I'll circle back and put some effort into learning about it. And I did, and it was amazing. I went from...
How did you first hear about it?
Joe Rogan podcast.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah. I heard about Sam Harris's app, and that he was giving it away for free, if you didn't have the money or whatever. And I was like, you know what, maybe I'll try it. I'm not into that, but maybe it'll get me to sleep, right? And then after that, I read tons of books and was listening to lectures and everything on mindfulness, because I did not understand what it was about prior to learning about it. And I think I would say the majority of the military probably has that same misconception. They don't understand that it's about precision of mind, controlling being able to react how you want to situations and being able to shift your mindset at will.
Yeah, there needs to be this major reframe. It's like when you were talking about even if somebody saw you go into the counselor's office, it's this idea and perception like, oh, he's losing it, or there's an element of weakness. Whereas the reframe is like, everybody should be going into that office to train their minds the same way they train their bodies. It's exactly what you're saying. Precision of mindset is key. I mean, if I look at anyone who is at the top performer, which is, military athletes, mindset is so crucial for you to perform. Like, it doesn't matter if you're in amazing physical shape or can actually do the thing and fly the plane and do what's asked of you. But in order to do it in a way that is strategic and centered, I think you need an element of mindfulness and working on that connection with the body. So the reframe of like, this is an opportunity for you to be even a more optimized version of yourself. You're supposed to be. I mean, if I think of people in the military, you're like the optimized human. You're supposed to be at your performing at your peak, at your best, athletes too, right? That includes every aspect of your body, including your brain.
Yeah, I think a lot of this stuff is starting to come around, and the military is going to have more access. Like I was saying, I really didn't know much about human performance or neuroscience, and really nothing about, meditation prior to me going through that period of my life. And to wrap that piece up, I went from thinking about how I did not want to live for probably 12 hours a day to maybe 2 or 3 hours a day in a matter of weeks, just from picking up a basic understanding of mindfulness and being able to, identify thought, categorize the thought if it's, unnecessary or unskillful, being able to transition to something positive. If I don't have the resources to affect it today, I put it on the calendar. And then, whether there's a new resource at that date on the calendar or not, doesn't matter. And then after that, I pray to God and try to pass the rest of that fear and anxiety to him in the form of prayer and faith, So that was huge. That was like the first step in the right direction of me getting out of just negative trains of thought continuously. And after that, the next thing was vibroacoustic therapy.
Tell me more about that.
Oh, it is spectacular. It is, it's one of the best ways to get someone to activate the parasympathetic nervous system pretty rapidly.
Through sound?
Through sound, yeah. So it plays, you can play all kinds of music on it, but the one that I bought from a company called In Harmony, and they have like their own soundtrack. And it's just a lot of low frequency sounds. It sounds like normal music when you have the headphones on.
Yeah.
Like, there's no vocals on any of the stuff that's on
like
their
a sound
soundtrack. It is like a sound bath, but you're laying on this massage table, and it's got like these 12-inch transducers. And it is the thickest, heaviest vibration you've ever felt in your life, and it's just continuously on. It feels like you're laying on heaven. I mean, so kind of scientifically what it's doing is it helps to increase circulation and reduce cortisol levels. And then
how does it do that? Through sound frequency?
That I wish I had a better answer for you.
Okay.
Or I wish I had a more in-depth knowledge of how that works, but I don't want to.
Yeah, we'll check it out, and I'll put a little link in the show notes.
Yeah, it's spectacular though. If you have somebody that's in fight or flight and you get them to lay on that, if it does its job, which I haven't seen it not work.
Yeah.
After about 30 minutes, they get up and they're like, oh my gosh, I feel so heavy now. Well,
yeah.
Your
It
adrenaline's
grounds
gone.
you. Yeah.
Your adrenaline is gone, and now you're dealing with the repercussions of running so hard for so long. And like, welcome back to reality. Go get some rest now. Because if you're that heavy, it's because your tank is empty.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
But I did that. I would do that for like an hour a night, every single night. It was amazing. And
game changer.
yeah. And I just spent the whole hour meditating on it or thinking through, how I was going to solve the problems that I had going on at the time. It was great. And then next, my next door neighbor convinced me to do a cold plunge. And this guy is a brainiac. I've got to introduce you to him. His name is Manuel Del Monte. And he actually just did 2 TEDx's on dopamine. And I think it was called The Brain Has Gas Stations. Super good TEDx.
Love that.
All about dopamine.
Cold plunge is a gas station for the brain.
Yep.
The dopamine hit is real.
It is. And, when he did it, he gave me the super scientific explanation. I was like excited because most people don't do that. I'm a very data-driven person or science-driven person. So once you tell me the science behind it and I can understand how it works and it makes sense to me, I'm in. I'm like, I can see how it works. It makes sense, But if you just tell me like, oh, this is going to make you happy, I'm like, no.
How?
I don't care. Like, if you can't explain it to me, I want nothing to do with it. So he had me hooked before I even got in. And of course, the first time you jump in, you're like, all right, this was dumb. This is horrible. Like, it's so cold. And then you're like, am I just a big wimp? Maybe I'm not cut out for this. You go through all
of the questions,
all of the thoughts that every single person has when they jump in a cold plunge for the first time. And, they got to convince you to stay in there. But yeah, that was it. After that, I kept on forcing myself to do it because as soon as I got out of his trash can, that time
we're gonna have to upgrade his cold plunge.
As soon as I got out, I was just blown away by how I felt, and it really felt like all the apps on my phone had been running for a long time, and someone showed me how to swipe up, and
that's such a
everything.
Good analogy. That feels nice. Yeah. Wait, okay, so now we have to go back to the science behind cold plunge and what Manuel sold you on. So what happens to your body during a cold plunge? What happens to your brain during a cold plunge? What are your insights there?
Yeah. So, first thing when you get in there, your body is already activating the fight or flight response. So norepinephrine is the main neuromodulator that's released, right? And so I kind of want to talk a little bit about the fight or flight response in general, and then neuroplasticity, and that'll kind of lead us back into what's going on in the cold plunge.
Yes.
So the fight or flight response, the example I like to use is you walk up to an intersection, maybe you're 4 or 5, first time that you almost got hit by a car, right? Somebody yells at you and you jump out of the way, you get out of the way, right? What do you think happens for the next 6 months every time you walk up to an intersection? You look left and right, probably like too many times. People are looking at you weird, wondering why you're looking so many times.
Your body stores it.
Yes. And it stored it hard. There's so many things that we come into contact with on a daily basis and we're like, oh, I should remember that. And you'll never remember it again. But for some reason, that's the one that you remember.
Because it's survival.
It's survival. And what started that sequence of storing that information in long-term memory is the release of norepinephrine.
Mm-hmm.
And so your brain says, what is going on right now is extremely important. And so we need to memorize this. And so it's almost like a mountaintop and you're at the peak right now of neuroplasticity. And let me back this up.
I do want to just put a pin in that. I think that's a really important note for what we're about to discuss. Is it solidifies that memory because of the norepinephrine, right? And so for good or for bad in terms of like, oh, I'm going in fight or flight. But I want to talk about this later. You can use it for good as well, storing better things. So I just want to put a pin in that, like the combination of norepinephrine in your brain plus action of like environmental factor / belief solidifies something in your body that creates a reaction, right?
Yep.
Okay. I think that's fascinating. Okay, sorry, go on.
No, you're good. I did want to back it up one step and explain what neuroplasticity is for people that don't understand it. So neuroplasticity, when you're young, you learn things really fast. You can learn a new language very easy. As you get older, it's harder for you to learn new things. You become stuck in your ways. That's why the old grandpa may still be racist and he can't come to terms with the times because his brain is not really malleable anymore. Yeah. He's not open to change. So now we understand what neuroplasticity is, and then we'll get back into that with the cold plunge. So, you've walked into this intersection, you almost got hit, your brain presses record. Now, it doesn't record just from right now and forward. It's like a Tesla where you honk the horn and it records like the last 10 minutes and the next 10 minutes, right? Mm-hmm. Times are irrelevant. That's just a example. I can't tell you what the exact times are, but it's recording leading up to the event, during the event, and then after as well, because you need to know how you got into that situation. That's probably the most important information, is what got you to that point where your body thought it was important enough to release a bunch of norepinephrine. Mm-hmm. So kind of leaning into what you were talking about with putting a pin in it, you can hijack this system. All right, we're getting in a cold plunge. We're in a safe environment. We have constraints, 10 minutes max, or whatever your constraints are, temperature, time, someone there to monitor you. Now we know we're in a safe environment. So we don't need that norepinephrine to teach us anything about what's going on in the cold plunge. And that's where we hijack the system. And so I have 3 exercises or protocols, if you want to call them, that I teach to people. And it just kind of depends on, where you're at in life, what's your, why are you doing the cold plunge? Are you just doing it for overall wellness, or is there something that you need to achieve or get past? Kind of depends on which direction I point them in. But so the first one is really just a visualization process. And so, maybe I did this for Jared Wallace, who competed in the Paris Olympics. I designed a protocol for him leading up to the trials, where he broke 2 American records. And then leading into the Olympics, and first time competing in the long jump, and he brought the bronze medal home. So super proud of him. But so someone trying to achieve something or change something significant in their life, right? Maybe they drink too much. Maybe they want to drink less, right? And so I kind of talk to them before they get in the cold plunge to package some thoughts in different areas that you can think about that in. But when you get in the cold plunge, the goal is to visualize the steps that you need to execute to get to that point, and then to see yourself standing at that finish line, but recognize that it's you, and the only difference between that person and you is time. That's it. That's it. And it has to be factual in your brain. You have to train your brain that this is a fact, that that's who I am, and I'm just working towards achieving that. And because you have all this norepinephrine and you have all this neuroplasticity, your brain is malleable and it changes. We know that it can change a habit significantly because of that example where you almost get hit by a car and now you look ridiculously, 5-6 times left and right when you come up to an intersection. So we know it's powerful. So if you can convince yourself that this is who I am, it's like being told, when you're growing up that you're going to do something spectacular. And I was told that as a kid. And I'll tell you what, it worked wonders for me.
Totally.
It really
because
did.
It solidifies that belief in your subconscious. And we are living from our subconscious. Our life is a reflection of our beliefs. And if you believe you are powerful, and if you believe that your body is capable of healing, if you believe that you can win the Paris Olympics and you can perform in a certain way, if you believe you're going to do amazing things, you will. Because whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. It's all about your beliefs. And what I mean by that is what has been programmed into your system, into your brain through childhood memories, through your environment, through whatever it is you've observed, which is cool that, you had, going back to your childhood, you were able to observe a family of entrepreneurs, risk takers, people who believed in themselves. So I imagine that solidified a belief in your brain that that's possible, you're capable of that. But if somebody wants to be an entrepreneur and didn't observe that, that's okay. Get in a cold plunge and visualize yourself doing that, because then it can create these new neural pathways of possibility. When we met during our beautiful roundtable, you mentioned that you use this for not only, athletes, like coaching your client on, getting through not only getting through the Olympics, winning a medal in the Olympics, people suffering from mental health, going back to your journey with your mental health. How do you, you mentioned the sound healing bed or that technology, the Sam Harris app, and cold plunges with Manuel. All of those things, how did they contribute? And are there any other things that really made a big dent in your mental health journey where you were like, whoa, this stuff works. I need to share this with my community because this has changed my life. What was that aha moment that you had?
Yeah, the most powerful modality that I've done, or therapy in general, cold plunge is number 2 for me. It's number 1 in some cases. If you're talking immediate, like I had a guy call me with a 45 in his hand, got him in a cold plunge a couple of hours later, and there's a whole lot more to it. We spent 6 hours together, but he left saying that he's never had more hope in his life than that day. That's what cold plunge can do. It can change some stuff immediately. It's a pattern interrupter. But the tool that I like for enduring, kind of long distance changes, right?
Mm-hmm.
So things that really, really we're talking about rewiring the brain is neurofeedback. Neurofeedback is spectacular, and it's insane that it is not as proliferated as it is. I mean, there's so many people, like the majority of people that I talk to have no clue what it is. And it works very simply. The system that I have has 12 EEGs, electroencephalograms. They measure the frequencies and the volume or the certain frequencies in your brain, right? So you've got gamma, you've got beta, alpha, theta, delta. Mm-hmm. So gamma is the highest frequency. We don't really measure that one and pay a whole lot of attention to that because the more important ones are beta and alpha. So beta is predator about to pounce on its prey, extremely alert and focused, right? Mm-hmm. And then under that, you've got alpha, which is what you and I are probably both operating in. Now you can have all of these frequencies going on at the same time. It's just one is dominant. And then theta is like sleep-like wakefulness, so maybe a little bit of daydreaming or light sleep. And then delta is deep sleep, REM sleep. That's where your brain is pushing amyloid plaque or waste product out of the brain and like actually recovering, storing things on long-term memory, all those really important functions that we need sleep for. So it measures those frequencies, and then it measures interconnectivity between different parts of the brain. And I'll give you an example, an easy problem that it can solve. So somebody comes in, they don't even have to tell me what's going on. Well, we can just, they'll fill out a form, but we can do their brain map, and most of the time I can tell them a little bit about what's going on, especially if they have a lot of like if they have beta dysregulation. They almost always have high anxiety.
Yeah.
And a lot of times they have insomnia too.
Yeah, because it's their brain thinking that they're being chased by a tiger 24/7 in some way, shape, or form. Is that right?
Yep. And they have chronic fatigue. They're extremely burned out because they've been operating at this super high frequency for a very long time. It's exhausting. And they're always on edge, and they can't get it to shut down. So their body is just burning through norepinephrine and adrenaline like continuously.
How does that relate? I don't know. Do you have the Oura Ring or any kind of measurement of heart rate variability? I imagine that would correlate with heart rate variability.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. I do not have an Oura Ring. We are looking into incorporating that into
the practice.
Into the Davis Focus Project over time. There's another company I'm trying to partner with to get some of that done.
I'm just curious because I've been working on my own HRV because it's a whole other tangent. I won't even get into.
It's one of the most important biomarkers. So
yeah, but it's also just such a weird biomarker for me. I think I might have to do like a sleep study or something. My HRV is fine during the day, like high, great. I'm relaxed, and the second I fall asleep or go into deep sleep, it plummets. It's maybe there's like just I'm fascinated by it. I'm like, I need to solve this HRV problem because deep sleep is really important. I get deep sleep. I don't know. We'll see. That's another tangent. We don't have to talk about that here.
I have a sleep pro if you need one. He's a Navy SEAL, it's a nonprofit organization and a for-profit.
Yeah.
So you can go to him whether you're military or not. It's like a $2,000 course. It lasts 6 weeks. It's done remotely. Yeah. He sends you some equipment, and this guy is really smart. I'll connect you with him after.
Yes, please. Yeah. Curious about that. So back to the brain scans and determining whether or not somebody's in constant low-grade fight or flight.
Yeah. So if we see beta dysregulation, if the meter's pegged out, and you can see it on the scans too, you'll see heavy areas of beta frequencies throughout the brain. And what that's telling us is that people are stuck in fight or that person is stuck in fight or flight. They're having a hard time coming out of it. And so if you can never get out of beta, if you can never transition from beta to alpha dominance and then theta and down, you don't rest. You may never go to sleep. And if you do, you're probably definitely not getting into delta. And so when you start talking, someone has physical damage to the brain, like a TBI, concussions, that kind of stuff. Now the problems just cascade, and now you have secondary injuries, like secondary traumatic brain injuries, because you're not able to activate what's called the glymphatic system to detox and push all the waste product out of the brain. So the problems get really bad really fast, but it's so easy to identify. Beta dysregulation, we put them on a beta dysregulation protocol. And within 5 sessions, most people are already starting to experience some changes. And
wait, how does that work? So you're just sending waves. Tell me everything.
we measure the waves with the headset that has the 12 EEGs. Once we get the map, we select the protocol, we program it.
And the protocol is just sending waves and frequencies into the brain?
No, it doesn't send anything. This is a passive. It's technically a passive system. It depends on how you look at it. The only signal coming out is Netflix and video and audio. That's it.
Okay.
And so the way that it works is if you're on the beta dysregulation protocol and you're watching, so you'll set the system up, you open Netflix, play it, the screen dims when you are producing beta waves. The volume also comes down.
So when you say you play Netflix, what's actually playing?
Whatever you want.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you can Amazon, it doesn't matter. Any video, you can watch a video on your computer. And
because when you're watching TV and when your brain goes into a theta state, doesn't it? I don't know.
Yeah, I think it probably depends on what you're watching too, right? I've thought a lot about the interference of what you're watching with the programming, but the data shows that it doesn't matter a whole lot. I mean, you probably shouldn't watch Saw while you're doing neurofeedback, right? But it needs to be engaging, because the way that the system works is if your brain is not doing what it's supposed to do, which is produce anything besides beta, like we don't want you to produce beta right now. So when you produce beta,
you want to get it into alpha.
It punishes you by bringing the volume of the audio down and dimming the screen to where you can't see it.
Oh.
And so what gets your brain to try to fix that is dopamine. So it's a dopaminergic driven system where you're motivated because you want to see this, and your brain it's like, all right, I did 1 billion things in the last second. What was I doing to get this to work? And so it's a slow feedback loop where the computer is teaching your brain that this is what we want you to do. And then after you start to do it for a while and you feel the results, you're like, oh, it feels great to not be spinning my wheels 1,000,000 miles an hour continuously.
Yeah.
It's ultra powerful. You can do that training for almost any psychological condition that you may have. ADHD, really depression, bipolar disorder, like everything. It covers everything.
Yeah, I imagine a lot of these, neurodivergence in general, people who have ADHD aren't getting enough dopamine, so your brain isn't opening up to receive that dopamine. So if you're training them to work with the brain on getting them to a more relaxed state where they can potentially open up those pathways and doorways, if that's like a way to explain it, that makes sense how it could be really impactful. I'm so fascinated by that. So you said neurofeedback was like your number one. This is like what changed your life.
QEEG neurofeedback specifically. There's other types of neurofeedback, and then there are things that are similar to neurofeedback. But QEEG, it's kind of like creatine. It's like tested. There's so many scientific studies out there backing it up. Yeah. And the cool, last thing about neurofeedback, the coolest thing about it is it's like going through 30 or 40 sessions is like doing several years of meditation.
Yeah.
It's training, because that's really what meditation is training you to do. And it's that powerful.
Yeah, just getting into that relaxed state so that you can finally hear your own voice versus negative, fearful thoughts that are going to spiral you out of control. So, okay, number 1, neurofeedback. Number 2, cold plunge. Number 3, probably that, would you say the sound frequency bed? What's your number 3?
Well, I feel like the number 2 and number 3 spot are still up to be potentially contested. I have not done hyperbaric oxygen therapy myself, but everything that I've read about it, I'm actually about to go do it here pretty soon.
Oh, nice. Where are you going to go?
There's a nonprofit that reached out to my nonprofit.
Yeah.
To tell me that they had a lot of funding. So if we had it open, they could pay for people to come use it. And we got this hotkin, and he's like, oh, you have a TBI? Oh, there's a place in Nashville. So I can't remember the name of the place off the top of my head, but they're in that program. So they'll pay for, 40 hours. And so I'm really excited. I'm going to go do it. I have a lot of hopes about it because, over pressure or pushing that much oxygen through your body, that's why the Wim Hof works, right?
Yes,
so
that's why breath work works.
And there's so much more going on when you're pressurizing an area too. So really excited to see that. Contrast therapy has been spectacular, especially if you feel like you plateau on cold plunge because you do it too much. Then change it up and do some contrast therapy for a while. It's really good.
Yeah, it helps build that adaptability too. We're so spoiled with heat and air conditioning, and our bodies lose the ability to adapt to. It's all about adaptability, I think. Yeah. Tell me more about, let's go back to the conversation around cold plunge and what happens to our brain and the visualizations you do. Is there anything else that you do in those cold plunges that have really been game-changing for your clients and for people? Visualization, huge. Again, taking advantage of that norepinephrine hit, which is so important to telling your body, hey, this is important. Whatever I'm doing right now, pay attention. What else do you do in those moments? And maybe it would be helpful if you can. I don't know if it's too personal, but
the client that you had that was really ready to take his life, and you spent 6 hours with him, and he said he's never felt more hope in his life. Can you talk a little bit about what that looked like?
Yeah. Actually, yeah, I can share the full story. We're going to record it here pretty soon. His name's Isaac, an amazing guy. I've never seen this much like burning fire in somebody's chest. Like the kid is just he's amazing. I get a little emotional about it because I'm so happy to see where he is these days. You know, that was January, it's 2 days after our charity event. So this is like how divine the thing was. 2 days before the event was, you know, when the snowstorm hit. A board member gave me 4 tickets to give away to veterans. Within the hour, Isaac hit me up on LinkedIn and said, "Hey, can I get some tickets to your event?" I said, "How many?" He said, 4. I said, "Perfect. See you there Saturday." Long story short, talked with him a couple minutes on Saturday. I was, you know, busy running the show. 2 days later, he reached out to me and said, "Hey, man, you know, my twin sister committed suicide right after she got back from Iraq. Told me about some PTSD that he had, something really hard that he went through, and was just like, I can't take this anymore. I can't do this anymore." He's like, my heart hurts so bad. I cannot take any more pain. I just want it to be over. So had him, I was dropping kids off at school in Clarksville. I said, grab 120 pounds of ice and meet me at my house. And it was during the ice storm. Did not need that much ice, but it worked out really good. And this will kind of drive a point home of why extreme temperatures, the more extreme they are, the better they are for the psychological aspect. Not that you need to go extreme all the time, right? So he shows up in tears, can kind of barely talk at this point. He's just having that hard of a time.
But I also love that he reached out for help, right?
Yes.
Like, wow, incredible that he raised his hand and said, "I know that I'm out on a limb here. Like, I just need some help." And the fact that you were there, beautiful.
That's important. I mean, if you're listening, who can help you if you don't raise your hand? Like, just do it.
Just do it.
Yeah.
Ask for it.
Yeah. And pray for it. I bet you it'll show up. You know, I get him in the house and I can tell, all right, if I put him in the cold plunge right now, he ain't going to last. So I set him on the sound lounge for about 30 minutes. And then we start to talk a little bit through the problem. And I'm trying to formulate what protocol we're going to use in the cold plunge and, you know, what I'm going to talk to him about when he's in there. And I teach him about what we're going to do in there. At the time, I was actually having people do the Wim Hof in the cold plunge because I was right there and, you know, it's safe. But kind of what I've learned over time is you really can't do that until someone's done a cold plunge several times or you're at a much higher temperature, you know, maybe even 50 degrees.
Yeah.
They'll never get to the Wim Hof because they'll bell in the breath hold. Because it releases so much adrenaline that people like kind of freak. It's just too much anxiety. Yeah. And that's why if you ever do it in the cold plunge, the person has to be super calm before they start it. And then again, there's some risk if you're doing it alone, so you probably shouldn't do it alone. So with him, it was really just about getting his breathing under control when he got in there. So, at first I told him, hey, when you get in there, we're going to do some box breathing, 4 seconds in, 4 second pause, 4 seconds out, 4 second pause.
Slow the breath. Yeah.
And we're working on that rhythm. I want you to really focus on everything from, where the air is entering your body to the expansion of your lungs, the whole 9 yards. And so he gets in there and there's that much ice at the top of this thing when he gets in there, and I'm just like, all right, how am I going to get him in after he bells in 30 seconds? Because this is cold. This is probably the coldest one I've made.
Yeah.
And like a minute goes by, and we're talking. I'm asking him about some of his happiest moments, right? So I'm trying to just distract him.
Great, because again, that like shot of norepinephrine in your brain when you're talking about the happiest moments. Your body doesn't know the difference that they're not happening in that moment a little bit, right? Do you think? Like, it's the same thing as visualization. It's just a different type of visualization. It's like if you can be happy in this moment, think about those memories, your body then begins to think, wait, am I in those happy memories right now in some way?
Yeah. So I try to spend the first little bit of time helping them get past that point where they want to bell.
Yeah.
So breathing is the first thing that they got to do to start to get their cortisol levels down and their heart rate down, so they're not so anxious that they hit this point and they're like, I can't do anymore. And they got to bell. So breathing under control, and then get their mind under control once you get the breathing under control. And then next I move into those protocols. With Isaac, I'm not sure that we did any of the protocols. I think that I spent a lot of time pulling positivity out of him, asking him, about his wife and where they met and like what they did on their honeymoon, like that kind of stuff, right? Yeah. And so, he asked, how long are we staying in here? I said, well, let's do 6 minutes. And he's like, well, why don't we do 7? 6 is devil's number. I'm like, okay, cool. We'll do 7. And long story short, he kept on extending, and he's like, how long can we stay in here? I said, 10 minutes. That's it. And then you got to get out. And so by the time he was getting out of the cold plunge, he was talking shit to me.
Yeah.
And he called me a bunch of explicitives, and he was laughing. And I was like, dude, if that's how you feel right now, that's spectacular.
Great.
Like,
yes,
that's amazing.
If you've got a little zest in your step.
Got some fire back in him,
yes.
right? I mean, he already had a lot of fire. He was in there for 10 minutes.
Yeah. It's that fire. I always tell people when I'm guiding them through cold plunges too, I'm like, there is a fire inside of you. Imagine that you're lighting that fire through the breath. And it feels empowering for people to imagine this, like, I can create fire in my body. And like, yes, there is this element of like, your body's fully capable of creating its own heat source. And just tap into your ability and be in awe of what your body is actually capable of, because it's unreal.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
Well,
so
that's an incredible story about Isaac. Yeah.
Yeah. There's a lot more steps that we did to plan his or to set his program up for the next several months, right? And I won't get into that. I want to get back to what I didn't say during this, which is your question: what are my other protocols, right?
Yes.
So the next one that I created after that visualization I kind of combined a couple things, and it's all about gratitude, right? So I was thinking, I've been reading a lot about how it's really hard to feel gratitude and anxiety or fear simultaneously. It's the same circuitry, not impossible, right? But it's a lot harder. So I thought, why don't I do this gratitude practice that everybody's doing? Why don't I do that in the cold plunge and couple it with the neuroplasticity? Now I'm like really changing how I respond to this negative stimulus. Filling it with comfort, right? Because gratitude is comfort. When you think of how grateful you are for people, it reminds you of how much love you have around you, and you're comfortable. So if you can do that in somewhere where you're staring death in the face, which is the cold plunge, even if you're not going to die, your body is still staring death in the face. Yeah. And if you can bring that comfort and remind yourself that you have all of the support and life is actually really good, I think that will continue to change your reaction to negative stimulus like that in the future. And I take it a step further. And if, someone is a person of faith, and it doesn't matter what the religion is, if they pray to somebody, like pray in the form of gratitude, give gratitude to your creator in the cold plunge. And now you're not just involving the love and comfort of everyone around you, but you're involving your creator and that love with you in that moment of need when you're facing something, this hard. And I really do feel that those coupled with the neuroplasticity, you start to carry that with you throughout the day, and you start to remember, I'm not alone. Like I have all these people and resources that I'm grateful for, and I'm not alone. So that's number 2. And number 3 is kind of for the extreme person or somebody who's just looking for something new. You know, you want to try something a little harder. So what I tell people to do is crank the cold or the cold plunge as low as it'll go. If you want to add ice, add some ice and get in there. And from the second that you get in there to the second you get out, do not stop moving and concentrate on all of that pain. And you're setting an ultra high stress threshold. Especially if you're doing it at the beginning of the day, right?
Yeah.
Like doing that at the beginning of the day is perfect. But I want you to if it's your fingers that are hurting the most, I want you to think about your fingers and every single bone that it's hurting. I want you to feel that pain maximally.
Like exposure therapy, like
100%.
feeling the maximum and still knowing that you'll be okay.
Yep.
Builds this sense of like, I'll be okay in everyday life.
And it carries over into the psychological things or the psychological side of things so powerfully. You know, the brain can't really tell the difference between physical and psychological pain. It can't differentiate.
Yeah, it doesn't know the difference. For good, I tell everyone this too. Your body doesn't know the difference. This is wild. Your body doesn't know the difference between what's real and what's not real. Like, which is why you can have a stress response in a dream, which is why your face can turn red or you can start shaking if you have a thought. It's a physical response to a thought, which is not real. It doesn't actually have to be happening. You could be having a thought that you're going to get fired. You're not actually getting fired, but your body doesn't know that you're not getting fired. Your body's like, I'm getting fired. My face is red. I'm shaking. My nervous system response is going awry. But at the same, that's a bad situation. But going back to the visualization, going back to Isaac, thinking about joy too, your body doesn't know the difference that that's not happening right now. So what if you just got into a state where, and this is a lot of Dr. Joe Dispenza's work, you get into a constant state of gratitude and you get into a constant state of tapping into this feeling of being that new identity, right? So if you no longer want to identify as somebody who no longer wants to live, you want to be somebody who has a joy for life, has a zest for life, who sees positive in everything, whatever that identity is, tell your body. Basically, like the body's listening to you. You tell your body what to do. You want to identify as an athlete and visualize winning a medal in the Olympics. Visualize yourself as that person. Your body doesn't know the difference, and then you become that person. And so it's so interesting to see like how that actually works in the brain with neuroplasticity and all the tools that you're mentioning, everything that you're mentioning.
Yeah, there's so many ways that you can release psychological stress physically. Everything from, you know, just like flexing really hard, squeezing everything for like 10 seconds and you let it go. And I mean, that feels pretty good.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
I actually had a counselor that I was talking to, and I was having a hard time letting things go. I was like ruminating, and I'm like, why am I all of a sudden ruminating on things for days? And it like stops me from being able to do anything else. And I told her all the psychological tools that I was using to try to overcome that. And she's like, okay, so the psychological tools aren't working. She's like, well, let's look at the physical ones. What can you do? And obviously, like hard exercise was the first one. Go do some cardio, like some intense, some HIIT, or, you know, go hit the gym hard. But another one that you can do is if you have something that's just really bugging you, like think about it, right? And then you feel where it comes up physically in the body. Like, because a lot of people, you know, it's like you're saying, you know, you're dreaming and like you get tense, right? Even though you're not actually in the situation, your body does that when you have these thoughts, right? And so you got to figure out where's your body having that tension. So for me, it was like in the chest. I felt like I was like flexing in the front. And then obviously I felt it, well, not obviously, but I felt it a little bit around my eyes too. And I actually kind of felt like crying a little bit. But so she had me just focus on those areas. And we were silent for like 2 minutes. And I was like, I don't know what's going on here. And she's like, are you still thinking about it? I'm like, yeah. She's like, what do you feel? I said, nothing. And I thought about it for a second. She's like, good. And I still didn't get it. And I was like, oh my gosh, like it's gone.
Yeah.
It's gone. Cause I focused, I faced it like physically, and I let it go physically. And then it kind of dissipated psychologically.
Well, it's energy that needs to be released. And I know a lot of people, and there's this, what is energy? People ask, like, I don't understand what you mean by energy. Energy and emotions, which is, what does Joe say? Energy and motion is emotion. If you have emotions, sadness, anger, grief, this is why I love breath work too. You just need to move the energy. The energy can't be destroyed. It just doesn't get destroyed. You have to move it and transmute it. And so doing things through the physical body to transmute the energy, whether it's a workout, whether it's a run, going for a run, breath work, anything you can do, throw a ball, cold plunge, anything physical, you're moving that energy to be more productive or out of your body, because our bodies store everything. So I think that's a fascinating story. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah. Yes, it's just tension and stress. And if you can get your body to release that, I mean, you stretch a muscle and you get that to relax. And that's the thing that was getting activated when you think about this thought. Now you have one less thing that's getting triggered. Like now your muscles aren't getting triggered when you think about this thought. And so your level of stress from this thought is significantly reduced. So I think it's really powerful.
Yeah. Such great tools. I could talk to you for hours. I just realized we need to be wrapping up soon. So I didn't want to wrap up before really hearing about your nonprofit, how you work with people, what the mission is, how can people get in touch with you, support the cause, anything we can do to support what you're doing.
Yeah. So right now we are currently raising funds to open what we're calling our phase 2 location. Right now we operate out of my garage. Nice. I do the neurofeedback inside where it's quiet, but like I just had someone come out.
Where is it?
Well, it's at my house here in East Nashville.
East. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I had someone come over and, we did like a 7-hour session yesterday. But our phase 2 location is going to be in Clarksville, right across from Fort Campbell. So the people who really need it have close access. We'll probably have two offices there with probably the same equipment that I have, maybe a couple extra things: sauna, cold plunge, neurofeedback, vibroacoustic therapy. We might have red light therapy by then. Mm-hmm. And that'll be our first brick and mortar to raise what we really need, because we need about 1.1 million to open the full facility with everything. And so I expect later on in 2025 to be there for that phase 2.
And is it only for vets, or can anyone contact you?
It's veterans, active duty, and Gold Star families. Yep. So I've got another organization that I'm doing a lot of similar stuff on the for-profit side, but they're completely unrelated. But yeah, so if you like what you heard about the nonprofit and you want to help veterans get this kind of help, and there's a whole lot more to it than that. We got a lot more stuff. Yeah. But you can go to the davisfocusproject.com. There's a donate button on there. We ask for monthly donations, and I'll show you how impactful this money can be. So if you were able to donate $60 a month, that equates to $720 a year, which is exactly what it costs us to run somebody who has PTSD or TBI through the full program: neurofeedback, hyperbaric oxygen therapy when we get it, everything. It's actually a little cheaper right now, but once our full facility's open and we have everything, great. $720. So you could save somebody's life with $60 a month. Now, if you don't have that, grab 2 friends or just donate 20. Yeah. It's going to add up over time, and it's impactful. So the davisfocusproject.com. We're on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, LinkedIn, all of the above.
Cool. Awesome. So this podcast is called Find Your Freedom, and I like to ask every guest that comes on, what does freedom mean to you, and what are different ways we talked about all the ways you find your freedom on a daily basis, but if there's anything you'd like to add to how you find your freedom and what that means to you.
Ooh, that's a deep question. I think that I find my freedom often through helping others. What what I noticed early in my military career, I was on a ruck march on Sand Hill in Fort Benning, and I was getting my butt kicked. I was having a rough time that day, and I was like, I'm not going to lag behind. I'm not going to slow down. And then this guy in front of me started struggling, and so I was about to pass him at that point, and I had the guy behind me, like right behind me. So I just put my hand on his bag and started pushing him, and I focused on that the whole time. And when I got to the top, I realized that that's when it stopped. It stopped being painful, is when I was helping this other guy. And I think that helping other people gives me freedom of mind.
Mm-hmm.
And
when it's no longer about you, there's something very freeing about that.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
What a great answer. Great answer. Thanks for sharing that. I think it's a good reminder too, when things get hard too. Sometimes it's it makes it a lot better to just forget about what you're dealing with and go help somebody else. And then you realize, oh wow, I'm free from whatever I was worried about, because now I'm just focused on making an impact here. And all of a sudden things are so relative, and it could potentially make whatever problem you were struggling with go away, maybe.
Yeah.
There's a lot of freedom in that. So I love that. Thank you for sharing.
Absolutely.
Cool. Well, this has been amazing. Love the conversation and love all the information you shared. I'm sure it will be helpful to those people listening who are thinking about using these tools, not only in extreme cases. Obviously, it's so helpful for anyone struggling, but it's incredibly helpful for anybody that just wants to find more joy in their life and realize that, like, I need to reprogram some things. I could use some neurofeedback. I have some limiting beliefs that are standing in the way of my dreams. How can I use these tools to really accomplish that and become the next version of myself? So really cool.
Thanks.
Love it. Thank you.
Well, thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Find Your Freedom podcast by Detox House. Any information that was shared in the episode today, including guest bios, their social profiles, and any relevant links that we discussed, can be found in the show notes below. If you're interested in learning more about Detox House and incorporating nervous system regulation practices into your everyday life, such as cold plunge, sauna, and breath work, please use the Detox House app as a resource. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you on the next one.